All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Morbid Symptoms podcast. I'm your host, Tara Van Dyke, and I'm very happy to have a special guest, Artless. We call her Artless. Well, we don't call her that. That's her moniker on X. So I'm glad to have her here with me. And the topic today we're going to be talking about, in broad terms, what I'm calling the development industry and green ideological fantasies and the real world consequences of the bright ideas and fantastic schemes that various development professionals, NGOs, USAID, etc., Soros Foundation, Bill Gates Foundation, all kinds of foundations have. And also, in terms of green ideological fantasies, the idea that windmills and solar panels and going vegetarian, with a variety of other things, can allow us not to have to change anything else, and we'll be all right. And so there's the notion that we want to. I invited Artless to come on and talk about these issues with me because through our discussions in other episodes and also on X, I came to be aware that she has a lot of insights on this issue. So without further ado, I will introduce Artless. So she's Artless. She's Miss Gives No Fox on X. You should follow her. She has a banger account. Let's see, what do I know about her? I don't know where she lives, and I don't know where she is currently, which is fine. No one needs to know that except for her, of course. She has a politics and law degree, and she works in the IT field. And in terms of political activism, she's been involved in various anti-racism campaigns or work, as well as a gender critical, I think she would call herself. So she's which basically in my mind always means that we know there are two sexes and that they can't change, and that sex is important for law and politics, and it's an important category and it belongs to females. And also self-determination for Palestinians and others. So I'll turn it over to see what you'd like to say in addition to about yourself or about this topic before we head into our discussion.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me on, Tara. I'm not sure I've got that much to add. I'm Artless, as most people on Twitter or X, as we call it now, might know. I think Tara's pretty much covered it. I live in Ghana, but
Oh, okay. I didn't know if I was supposed to say that or not. So
I was born and raised in London, and I lived in a few other cities as well before I finally Ghana. So yeah, I'm a bit of a third culture kid with broad exposure to a couple of continents, a few countries, and lots of lovely people from across all those different worlds. Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to, just pick a few brains along the way, along this journey called life, and learn not to label and put people in a box. And I hate being put in a box myself. So yeah, I think currently we're just living in a perfect shitstorm of milestone, shall we say?
Well, you can cuss on online if you'd like. So, I mean, I would prefer it if we didn't talk like total sailors, but sometimes sometimes there's only certain words that can do justice to
the
topic in hand.
We happen to be in this point of life, or for me anyway, there's a perfect convergence of all the three issues that I just really care about the most. Where be it.
All right, I'm sorry I have to stop you for a second. Is your laptop playing volume? I hear a bit of a.
Right.
Yeah, not so much an echo, but it's almost like I'm hearing you coming from a speaker in the background, but softly.
Okay, so maybe my laptop's. I think my iPad's decided that it's going to work.
Okay.
With camera, so I wouldn't have. So I might have to exit and come back on. If
That's
you don't.
Fine. That's fine. It's not really an echo. It just sounds like I'm getting kind of stereo sound or something.
Okay.
So I think you might have two devices picking up your voice.
Yeah, let's come out of this now. Is that better?
Let's see.
Is that better?
Can you just say a couple? Just keep on talking, and we'll see.
Yeah. So yeah, as I was saying, I feel like we're at this juncture where it's just a perfect convergence of three of the issues I've been really passionate about my entire life, and that is obviously the Palestinian cause of self-determination, which is a topic which is very, very close to my heart. Being Black, being African, coming from a background that's rife with colonialism and slavery, and like, I mean, the main theme is dominance and tyranny, really. And I see a lot of that in what's going on now currently between Israel and the Palestinians. And I would say, of course, as a woman who's grown up in Africa as well, I'm very aware of, bodily autonomy, the right to self, the right to name and define our own material reality. I echoes of racism in it, because we, as Black people, for a very long time, we weren't allowed to define our own material reality. I mean, you had, for example, the U.S. Declaration of Independence, which was for one set of people, but not another set of people who also inhabited it purely because of the color of their skin. So when we talk about legal fictions and what I like to say, white people's law allows but chooses to ignore it. I mean, history is, rife with those kind of inaccuracies, and we see it play out even now with what's going on in Palestine and Israel again, where the UN is clearly declaring what's going on, short of naming it demonstrating genocide, but it's saying it in all about words and trying to pass words together, use semantics to sort of and it's just a really time to really be alive and see how we paint different people and label them for having different beliefs or having different framings. That's been one of the really interesting things that's emerged out of this whole topic, and actually gave rise to the lead up to the veganism topic that Tara and I will hopefully touch on, because
we'll touch on the vegans. It's my current favorite thing to do now.
I feel like a lot of stuff where nowadays, I'm always hesitant to say this, but there's so much ignorance around about how people who are not in your orbit live, and forms a lot of moral superiority about things that obviously a lot of people don't know a lot about. And I felt like that conversation definitely felt like, okay, I think it's great, your dietary choices are your own, but do you have an awareness of how it works in other worlds or other continents and other, rather than up of a book? And I think we see it even now in the topics that we I mean, it was particularly coming back to Israel Palestinian issue. Sorry to keep doing that, but people will say stupid things fine. Like, "Oh, you sure you want to support the Palestinian cause? You're just a Hamas defender of rape. You go up to Palestine and you see you get raped, and you're like, dude, I've been there and I didn't get raped. Believe it or not, like there's just a lot of right now, and it's irritating that those voices happen to be the loudest voices in the West and helping to frame a very serious topic in ways that are just frankly true, as far as I'm concerned.
No, and we've had I mean, I'm sure that I don't, on some issues I'm sure that we have a lot of similarities in terms of how the response that we get, but of course there's going to be differences because people can look at us and see there's one obvious difference. So I'm bright white, from the no, I don't think there's a speck of, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, but that's another story. I mean, I also had the opportunity to live in Gaza for 2 years during the Second Intifada, and I also traveled around other places that were primarily Muslim. And when all this stuff started cascading out of people like water after October 7th, I felt compelled to post, I lived in these places. I was never raped. I was never sexually assaulted, on down the line. I'm not saying those things don't happen there. What I'm saying is that, everyone knew obviously that I was white. They knew I was American. They knew I wasn't a devout Muslim or Christian or whatever. And yet somehow, I just as an example of how, let's calm down about what we think these places are like, that we have no idea because we're just getting it from, the kind of the ether. But then I'm sure you've had the same experience that even when you put that out there, like, oh, well, you just, they needed you, or they were using you, or I'm like, oh, so it was like a long game. Like they could have attacked me and all these things, but they didn't, because they knew that 22 years later it would be useful.
Yeah.
I'm just like, you get to a point you can't deal with that. Anything you say, they're just gonna somehow turn it into support for their biases. And at a certain point, you're like, well, all right, good luck with that lovely worldview.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I think the astonishing part of it is they seem to think we are the naive ones, and it's like, no, we're not.
I know that's always the thing. Like they're patting us on the head. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Anyway,
The condescension.
Yeah,
Really.
it's like, oh, well, it's like, since our experience doesn't confirm their bias, then it must be the fact that, oops, what am I doing here? That's not what I want on here. That it doesn't confirm their bias, that somehow we're wrong. But I want to circle back, because our main topic is about kind of, the fantasies, or the lies that people involved in development work and also environmentalist movements, or environmental, I mean, now it's also an industry. So there's the activist side, and the both development. And by development, I mean poverty alleviation, economic development, that has been primarily targeted, quote unquote, on the third world after World War II, when, what was his name? Eisenhower, or was it? Yeah, somebody's basically came out after World War II and said, we're not going to make war, we're going to develop, and everyone should have, this capitalist, liberal capitalist societies, et cetera, et cetera. So there's the study of it, and then there's the programs and the projects, and then there's also the industry side and the government side that gets in there. And it's the same thing, I think, now that environmentalism has evolved into the same thing. So you have the activists, you have like the third sector NGOs, and then you have the corporations, and then you have the state that uses it for a variety of reasons. And so that's kind of like the broad thing that we wanted to talk about. But in terms of Artless, you brought up vegans. And so for those of us, people might not know this, there's a group that we're a part of, a chat group we're a part of. And there's a couple of maybe, I don't know, a few vegans in the group. And I always like to distinguish between vegans with like a small v and vegans with a capital V.
Right.
So, so it's the same thing with vegetarians or whoever, or religions. It's like, there's the ones who, so it's like, okay, either it's for, they just don't like the taste of animal products, or it's a moral thing because they don't want to eat or wear anything that requires an animal or to be killed. But then there's the ones that it's like a religion. It's like a political identity.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's about, this is about it's like a moral kind of stance, and it becomes, and that was the kind of the veganism, or that we want to that I would categorize as kind of a fantasy, because if you look at the information, veganism, even if everybody became a vegan, that would not solve the problems that people think it would solve. And I'll stop there and see what you want to say at any of that.
No, yeah, I agree. I hadn't thought about it quite that way, of dividing it into, a small v or a big V, but no, it does make sense. Right. Yeah, I've got friends who, one of my best friends is Russian, and she went through a vegan spell for a while, then she became vegetarian, and now she's at pescatarian.
Okay.
And it was fine. I've always been a meat eater anyways, but I don't believe in, obviously gratuitous killing of animals just for the sake of it. I mean, most people don't anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally respect people's dietary choices. But yeah, you talk about things being an identity, and I think that you can see that running through. And I think, okay, hey, if that's your shtick, go for it. But food is just food, and it's just a way of fueling the body sometimes, and sometimes you get pleasure out of it, and sometimes you do. But to become so political about food sometimes makes me think, gosh, you really don't have enough problems going on, do you? Because it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
it's not that serious. Okay, people, I hate to face my mom here, but people are actually starving. Okay, you just, yeah, like you eat it in balance, and you hope you eat in proportion, have a balanced diet. But and whichever way that works within your lens, fine. But the issue with making it such a militant way of being or as an identity means you don't allow for other perspectives as to why those other people don't perhaps share your perspective on that you choose to eat, whether it's vegan or whether it's as a carnivore or as a pescatarian, because for some people there are allergies, for some people there are ways of they won't be able to get enough nutrients. They would just stick to strictly vegan. I think out of the discussions that emerged as well was poverty is a huge issue in the part that I live in. Okay, and for most of those people, a vegan lifestyle is just not conducive to their day-to-day lifestyle. A luxury lifestyle for them because the means and means of production of those foods, which are in fact alien to the culture, to be honest. A lot of the foods that Ghanaians, for example, eat, very starchy, very heavy, and that's because most of them are manual or field workers, so they can't be able to get these supplements at an exorbitant cost. That's number one. Number two, if your job maintains you doing physical work like construction or any of the street food sellers, or in the heat, humidity, you're not going to be able to get a very sustainable diet off just a vegan lifestyle, and you probably end up being very nourished, and that's the honest truth of it.
Well, I always find them to be quite tired and hungry all the time, but cranky. I think it's because, and I'm thinking, well, and I'm sorry, people who the capital V vegans, I'm sorry, you can feel free to, to target my, I don't know, curiosities or whatever. But it's just that it's, yeah. I don't. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's just that, and I don't know. It could be that people who've been doing it for a long time, they have their system, they have it down pat. They have, they can with the supplements or with the whatever foods, they can get the nutrients that they need. But again, the point that we were making is that a lot of people don't have that luxury, even if they wanted to, and that there's certain lifestyles and certain climates that it's just like, I mean. Yeah, I mean, my thing is that from my understanding, I don't think it's a healthy diet choice. I just don't. So, but fine. I can see vegetarian, but it's just that from what I've seen, it's just, yeah. Or from what I've looked into, and the main book that I'm basing this off of is Lear Keefe's The Vegetarian Myth. And she was I think pretty militant vegan for maybe 20 years or whatever, and had lots of health problems and whatnot. And people can look at the book, but basically she goes into why she realized or came to accept the fact that vegan, both for health reasons, is not a good choice, but also in terms of helping protect the environment or to turn those things around, also has serious shortcomings, because a lot of the foods, whether it be the regular foods or the processed foods that vegans and require, takes a lot more water than animals or some of the other crops. You don't get as much nutritional value, especially things that primarily can only come from, as far as I know, animal products. So to me, it's just, but people don't want to hear that, and that's fine. But it's just this idea that, or they'll be like, well, that's your opinion. I'm like, well, no, it's not really my opinion, because I really didn't have a strong opinion on this. So when I was looking into it, I wasn't trying to convince someone to be a vegan or convince people not to be a vegan. I haven't done that. I was just kind of curious because I knew Lear Keith, and I knew that she had been a vegan for so long. So I was like, oh, well, what's going on here? Why did she, that's quite a turnaround to go from a vegan for 20 years to eating meat. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, this is, And I'm like, okay, it's another thing. It's another thing that I just assumed because it sounded right. And because the people saying it, I tended to trust that. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. If I look into this more, maybe it's a very much more complicated picture. So it's not black and white that there's only plus sides to veganism and not any kind of drawbacks, whether it be economic or health wise.
Yeah. No, I think I totally agree with you. I think, listen, I believe in informed choices for everybody, and that applies to every topic that I apply, because I think whatever I support, my personal stance is I have a responsibility to inform myself before I go and run my lips on anything. Okay. Point in advocating for something if I don't really understand all the intricacies, and not viewing it from my own lens, but from like an all-rounded perspective, so that something that I've chosen as a personal choice, be able to defend that choice appropriately. Okay, and I'm also a huge believer, as I said before, in autonomy all the way through. That's probably in my life. So the whole idea to impose my own choices, be it lifestyle, be it food choice, be it it's alien to me. Okay, do you and eat what you, and if it works for you, great. But the whole idea of trying to be so condescending about the fact that you think your choice is so much more better than someone else's, when you don't even understand how their choices affect their body, how they obtain what goes on their table, how you even obtain what goes on your table. Right? In the West, and I mean, this is one of the times when I almost regret not being in London, not being able to go to my fridge and go, half the things that would probably be in my fridge in London would be from other countries. I know I saw
more than half, I'm sure. Yeah,
there'll be vegetables from like broccoli from. I would put about 80% of it was not grown in the UK. Okay, so if you're living in another continent where they don't have those choices, where there are food tariffs for everything, it's not going to have the same choices in order to be able to make the same dietary requirements that you follow. And I don't know the discussion of that, or certainly when we're having that discussion, it seemed to me that there were people who were quite militant about it, in the sense of not that, look, it's not as easy a choice for you in the West as it is for other people on other continents. And by the way, Africa is not South America, so it's great that you have it. Okay, but
I know, and South Americans, I mean, my experience, when they like their barbecue, I mean, there's a lot of grilling going on, Argentinian grill and Brazilian grill. So I mean,
that conversation just seemed quite ironic to me, in the sense that and also, by the way, if you've lived in other countries, you will quickly discover that every country has. I always find it really amazing what people end up doing with plants and food, and how they sort of store it or cater it, or pull it apart to make a completely different dish to what in another country. In the, for example, they're really good with like fresh, like what they do with aubergines is, for example, amazing. Falafel, like just really. We have similar plants, but see that we do it that way. We'd use it for something else. We stew it a lot. We cook. It's all different forms. In the UK, for example, where you can easily get aubergines, I don't see that we do the same kind of foods from a traditionally English diet, unless you're an Iranian restaurant or a Greek restaurant or a Lebanese. You know what I mean? And when we were having a discussion, I was thinking, I know you're saying you've got X, Y, Z in South America. In Africa, we don't often have the same. We don't use them the same way. We don't cook them the same way. They don't necessarily fit in the culture. So you'd be totally following someone else's diet.
Well, and it was so silly. Like nobody was saying there aren't vegetables everywhere. I mean, we know there are vegetables and stuff, and I think we were also talking about that some places, and maybe even the majority, I can't say now, but that things are quite seasonal. So you can't go and get something at the store all year long. So and there's places that they don't have the grocery stores or the big markets. So there's people who are still there's still a lot of subsistence farming that goes along, or maybe they have subsistence farming and maybe one or two of the family members also works for wages somewhere. Sometimes. So it's just this idea. And I don't know, again, as a professional, I did try to go vegan for like a week or two. When was this? Was this in COVID? I think I was just bored. I needed something to do. And I thought, let's go vegan. And oh my God, what a pain in the ass that was. I mean, I was trying to come up with stuff to make that would be good, obviously, and filling, and trying to convince my kids and my husband in particular, who, if I would let him, would eat meat, nothing else but meat. I mean, he'd eat meat all the time. And it's like, why are we doing this? I'm like, well, because, blah, blah, blah. And I was just, and this is before I knew, had looked into it and some of the Lear's work and whatnot. And it was just so much work in order to have some variety. And again, people who've been doing it for a long time, I'm sure they can make amazing things. And if I had like Kim Kardashian's chef, maybe I'd be a super vegan. I don't know, but it's like I was just after like about 7 or 8 days. I'm like, okay, we'll just go back to where it was before. We have 2 vegetarian dinners a month, or not a month, but a week, and I'll forego the vegan thing. And my household was very happy. So that's just an anecdote.
No, I like that idea. This is what I mean by a balanced diet, where like however.
And I live in the UK, so
yeah, but I mean, to be fair, they are vegetarian as a lifestyle. I often said I could possibly quite easily become pescatarian because I eat a lot of fish, and red meat. I'm not a huge red meat fan, but like again, it all depends on what's in season and what you can get, right, and how you cook are available to you. So yeah, I think like as you said before, like to politicize food, I think it's just absolutely absurd. We shouldn't be doing this. We should allow for more informed choices about what we put in our bodies, and we should definitely be mindful of the ethical element, because it's gratuitous killing is. I mean, nobody's advocating that. Okay, and we need to be conscious, and climate change is real, of course, but we also need to be well aware of the ecosystem of life when we're at it.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the idea that a lot of people, there's quite a few, a lot of us eat way more animal products than we need, and that the factory farming stuff is just a horror. So I have no problem. I would have no problem encouraging, or even doing with myself, like paying more for a better quality and also a better mode of production of the animal products, and also cutting back. So it's just I like beans and other things. So that's a side thing. But yeah, so let's see. We also again, so I think that we're planning on the same page. Is that because I also have a theory, and I haven't studied this, so I don't know, and I bet that somebody has looked into it. Is that I think it's kind of interesting that when I'll just use my country as an example. So the United States. So when more people were able to have meat regularly, or to have a kind of a quote unquote middle class diet, so to speak, maybe, and then all of a sudden you have these kind of lifestyle things that come up. So you have the vegetarian and the veganism. And it's almost like the more kind of more constraints you can put on either your workout regime or your nutritional regime, somehow it kind of bolsters your cultural capital, for lack of a better word. It does distinguish you from the quote unquote plebs who are eating their pork chops and fried chicken and I don't know, hamburger helper. Which I hate a lot. My mom made a lot of hamburger and tuna helper when I was a kid. So, I'm not dogging that. But I think there might be something to that. And no, I'm not saying that that's the only reason why people do it. But I think that culturally, this distinction thing, I think I think it'd be an interesting thing to pursue if somebody wanted to do it. And probably somebody already is, but I'm just not familiar with it.
I completely agree with you on that as well. Because listen, when I was a kid, I mean, my mom did try and make us eat healthy, but outside of, I used to love eating street food, and I like, especially as a teenager, and my mom was very, very upset about it and be like, "Oh, it's so unhealthy," and but we just eat a lot of junk. And I sort of remember my friend who was saying is now pescatarian, but was vegan and vegetarian at one point, and when she was going through her vegetarian phase, I remember we went to this vegetarian restaurant in London called Titbits or something like that in Oxford Circus. And back then, I literally probably just finished university, so I was heavy on junk food. I was heavy on just eating all whatever. And I just was like, what, we're going to a vegetarian restaurant? Okay, I'm just going because it's you, and like I want you to. Okay, but I got there and I was picking all the well, something like fries, which I was very familiar with. And
the potato,
like steamed veg, broccoli, and I was like, no. So I did the vegetarian quiche with fries, which I was like, in hindsight now, so funny enough now at this stage, I would probably be eating the steamed veg with fish, but back then I just didn't really know enough of the to make that kind of choice where I was just like, oh, I guess the only thing you can eat is macaroni cheese or but
well,
now you're aware there's a lot more there's a wider palette. Like I love broccoli, for example. I love cauliflower. It just really wasn't a part of my diet at that point,
Oh no, I also grew up. I mean, I don't want to start dogging on my my mom, but it was kind of, I didn't really realize how lovely vegetables could be till I started waiting tables at the end of high school, because everything was like there'd be canned vegetables or like really overcooked everything. And so when I was like, oh, this, this steamed, or the kind of the what do you call it with the, I can't remember now, but with like not poached, that's the egg, but kind of like a water bath, or these various ways of cooking vegetables where the flavor and the texture is still quite nice. I was like, oh my God, it was a whole other world for me. I'm like, oh, so so I and it changes, so it's now I can't, I never use canned vegetables, but I'm usually, but my kids have another complaint, like, why do we always have a mixed salad? We're always having a mixed salad with dinner. I'm like, oh, boo-hoo.
Yeah.
Oh, you need the lovely greens and the olives and the tomatoes and the cucumber and the onions and and some feta cheese in there. Oh, you poor people. Cry me a river.
Oh, even dressing, for example, like all these things were just not things that became a part of my palate as I grew older and got exposed a lot more to other people who ate things and trying it out in restaurants and being like, oh, okay, I quite like this. Okay, I do, but I mean, if I ended up, either just staying in my life or even the UK, or when I went to other countries, I just stuck to what I knew. My palate would not have evolved enough to understand that. So I think you're absolutely right in the sense that had I stayed in a very insular sort of world where some people can do, I wouldn't have been exposed to enough different food cultures to understand the difference that was there, right? And that came from more exposure, and that's the honest truth of it, really.
Yeah. So anyway, in terms of bringing it back to kind of the development industry and kind of green fantasies of what can be can save the world, especially in poor areas, I think we'd both agree that pushing veganism or vegetarianism or any kind of ism in an area without knowing much about food availability, as well as storage and electricity and cooking practices and cultural practice and all that stuff, was something we would suggest not doing. I mean, all for nutrition, like people need enough, you want people to have enough nutrition and access to whether it be, whether they're growing their own or whatever. But this idea that somehow this is something that should be proselytized or spread in addition to whatever else is going on, I think is, and there are some cultures, places in the world, India, for example, has a lot of vegetarians. So it's not like it's, a totally, so, and that's a different, it's a different type of thing, but just the idea that somehow this is in any way something to focus on seems highly problematic. I mean, and you mentioned that too, just to use, because we'll just use where you are now. I mean, what do you think? What would like? Are there any vegans? Is there like a vegan scene in Ghana, or is it not at all?
I think I've seen that, and I do sort of try out a few things on the cultural scene in Ghana. I haven't even seen that yet. I don't think there's even been a vegetarian. I just don't think people would patronize, and that's the honest truth. People are experimental amongst the middle classes in Ghana, but they're experimental in terms of trying out different cultural cuisines. So if you just had a purely vegetarian restaurant, I'm not entirely sure how well that would go down. What normally tends to happen is we the bigger hotel chains like the Kempinski, or they will have like a buffet service where they'll have like vegetarian dishes and alongside some meat options as well. So if you want vegetarian stuff, you can get it all day long. I think there's like one dish that's like, I don't know, spinach and plantain and eggs. But
well, that's not vegan though. I was like, have the eggs.
Vegan,
I'm talking about vegans.
Yeah. I think the vegan option, you would really struggle in somewhere like Ghana. I can't even. Yeah, I can't think of what you'd have to just eat beans, I guess, and its own problems. The storage facilities, because of the humidity, you get insects getting in these things really, really quickly. So you can't store it for long. Blackouts cause problems with refrigeration. If you were to go and get the alternatives, like the vegan alternatives and things, much more pricier than normal. So what would probably happen if you're a vegan in Ghana is you'd probably be an expat, most likely, and you'd be someone who's frequently able to travel and therefore bring your own stuff in as much as you can. Like even I do certain things like that, things I want, like some of my veg, some of my things. And when I come packed with a little cooler bag, and I just put it in, and I shouldn't say this so immigration gets me next time at the airport, but and then I come and I put it in my, and I do, and I keep it moving. But it's because, as I was pointing out, a floret of broccoli will cost you the equivalent of £10 in Ghana, and this is the same floret will cost you ATP.
Okay, yeah.
And that floret of broccoli, if I wanted to buy local food, I could feed about maybe 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
That £10.
No, and there's this. That was another thing that was with the discussion or with about vegans and like the pluses and the minuses, or how accessible it is that some people are quite convinced that meat's always more expensive than vegetables, and it's like, well, it depends where you are, and it depends on the vegetable. And also some people, I think we also think that even though things have gotten, of course, increasingly monetized, there are still people who don't get the bulk of their food by the exchange of money. So there's that's just a different thing that, of course, you wouldn't tend to think about if you're not aware of that, and if you're just trying to, again, if you're so kind of so convinced of the appropriateness of your food choices that it's easy to dismiss that, or to say that, well, even though it's, or to say, well, that could be the case, but it shouldn't be that way. It should be. We should be going towards a more all veg diet, which is just, good luck with that. Good luck to you, sir. You go and tell the Chinese that and get back to me. I mean, that's all I have to say. I remember the story. I worked in China for a year in 2001 2002. And I remember I had a colleague who was also from the States, and she was a vegetarian. And this was such a curiosity for the Chinese people that we worked with. They were like just this
Okay.
idea that you would like that your food choice would be totally different from your family's, or the majority was just like, they were very, because they would go out, they would ask, they would, at least once a week, there'd be some sort of group or team dinner, and they would always invite us along. And she was always struggling because there was always going to a place where there's so much meat. And it wasn't that she wasn't just a vegetarian for health reasons. She really just didn't like to be around meat in general. And so I had explained to him, like, it's not that she doesn't like that you're inviting her, but it's really uncomfortable for her to be around, all this. And it was really, I remember, and it could be different now. This is anecdotal. It's not like I can speak for all of China based on, the 12 people that I worked with. But it was really, they were really fascinated by this. And I was like, yeah, so we'll see. I don't think that China's going to go predominantly vegetarian or vegan. But I could be wrong. Who knows? Maybe that was part of Mao's dream. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was like, first you get the full meat thing, and then you transition to, overcome that omnivore diet. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can only see your forehead now, Artless. Oh, there you are.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. It's just you have a beautiful visage. We want to see that. We want to see those fantastic watermelon earrings.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm going to try and move this onto my iPad, move the conversation onto my iPad, because I'm holding my phone consistently. I'm probably going to give my arm like a little rest here.
Well, while you're doing that, I'm gonna switch on to from veganism or vegan diet to green energy. And so, of course, we all know there's a lot of concern about climate change. And there's one of the main stories or main narratives is that we have to get off of fossil fuels. The sooner the better. There's this End Fossil Fuel campaign. Some people probably quite have heard about Extinction Rebellion. So there's this group. It's primarily in the UK, but they might have spread who like, throw soup on fancy paintings or block traffic or do a variety of things because they're wanting they want the government to quote unquote get off fossil fuel and whatnot. And so, and this is before October 7th, so it seems like a lifetime ago. But this was I might have been I don't know if it was in the summer, if that's when it was. But there's like Climate Week or what is it? Environment? I don't know. There's some sort of like week-long thing about environmentalism and global warming and all that. And you have all the big name environmentalists. Is it Peter McNichol or Peter Nickel? Anyway, from 360 or whatever it was, or 380, whatever it was, whatever the carbon amount was in the atmosphere that was supposed to be the end of us. He had that guy. Anyway, so I'm not in the States, right? I don't live in the States, but I'm from the States, and so I was following the Cornel West campaign, and at this time he was going to party candidate, and so he was making the rounds through all these climate actions and environmental actions during this week, and I just got so fed up because so I wrote this tweet: for the love of solar panels, could someone please inform Extinction Rebellion and the Greens, different tweet, that electricity is one form of energy. It remains pretty steady at 20% of global energy consumption. So solar and wind generate solar panels and windmills generate electricity. So even if they provided for all of it everywhere, that would only be 20% of global energy needs. So, and also solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, etc., are not renewable, and the industrial production of these is far from green. And also, besides nuclear, there's no alternative that can provide the energy of the constant load, so the power that you want to have all the time, that could power the quote unquote industrial civilization or cosmopolitan world that many of us in urban areas have become used to. And so my thing is like, I'm all for, I'm all for reducing our dependency on fossil fuels. I'm all for that, but it's just like, stop bullshitting everybody.
Yeah.
Just, and I don't know if they don't know or they don't want to know or they can't know or what it is, but it's like, can you please stop pretending that electricity is the only energy need that people have? I mean, it's crazy to me.
Hello?
Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that? Yeah. Can you? Yeah, I can hear you.
I think in Ghana, for example, we've also got we're trying to expand into solar because we have so many constant electrical blackouts that we'd like to find alternative means of powering all the various devices that need to be powered. And it's just not enough. It's not generate. And I mean, we live in a very hot country mostly, but we also have issues with flooding. We also have, you just don't want to make sure that all your needs are dependent on just one variable, right? So you want to have multi-choice. It's back to being in a position of choice to access widest possible range, whatever powers your country, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I keep bringing this back to like saying, for example, Palestine and stuff. You can see when initially when the war in Gaza started, and Israel decided they were gonna not so sensibly turn off, electricity, water, and all the, and people were conveying images to us via solar, but it was so limited in terms of what they could get out as, these alternative green energies. And I mean, in Ghana, for example, very careful how I phrase this, but certainly the people in power now, they have this thing where, what we call whitewashing or pinkwashing.
Yeah.
But this thing now where some people like to get a bit of for capital from the West by pretending to be so green or going on all these climate change conferences and all these other things.
Green signaling.
Yes. I do have to have a little chuckle sometimes because I've been noticing in our media that a particular powerful person has been going off on all these conferences about getting people off oil and things. And I'm thinking, you probably understand very well that this sells very well in the West, but for the average person who probably needs to understand a bit more about climate change in Ghana, they don't have the kind of money that would enable them to get off these new greener alternatives. When I was, for example, my mom used to cook stuff on the coal pot. We had a gas cooker. Electricity, it wasn't, because we had just had so much frequent blackouts. Again, we didn't have a generator at that point. My mother now does have a generator, but my partner and I don't have one. And so you have your gas cooker, you'd have your cool pot, which was out of firewood that they put in this pot. And I mean, now I think about it, the fumes from that must have been awful. But that's why we always, luckily the houses in Ghana, most middle class houses in Ghana are quite big, so people had the outdoor space kind of stuff. But in even like the less more poorer areas, they just don't have these, like a gas cylinder, for example. My husband went out the other day and bought replaced a gas cylinder, and it's gone up like twice in price. So people who aren't as lucky or fortunate as us are definitely not even going to bother using that. They're going to continue using the little pot where they keep firewood is cheap. They're just going to put it in that pot and they're just going to cook. They're not going to and we haven't even got to the point where we have electrical hobs and everything else like we do in the UK. So are you really going on these conferences? You know, like, are you?
Well, maybe, who knows? Maybe he's trying to get somebody to build a solar panel plant, a manufacturing plant in Ghana or wherever. Because this is one thing I forgot to mention. That when it comes to development industry, or or development programs, what the two things that are going to be, there's going to be successful in terms of not necessarily that it's going to achieve what it says to for the people it's targeting, but if it can make somebody money and it can be presented as non-political or as a technical issue, then it's going to go. So it's like this kind of stuff. They can be like, well, so when it be windmills or solar panels or information, ICT. I remember it's just so it's just going to go like crazy, and of course it's big money. Green energy trademark is a big industry now, and so I think that China might be leading it and whatnot. But then every once in a while you'll see something like, I can't remember what it was, if it was somewhere in the United States, or maybe it was in, I don't know where it was, but there was like this really bizarre hailstorm and it like destroyed a whole solar farm. And it's not funny, but it is also kind of funny at the same time. It's like, what are you going to do with this? And, it's kind of, and then again, that when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing, and since they don't have the capacity to store this energy, these things are always going to be part of a grid that unless they switch to nuclear, is supported at base by coal and just fossil fuels. But they don't want to admit that either, or they don't know it. That could also be the case. But some people do know it. It's not what's sold at these conferences and these parades.
Exactly. I mean, the other thing I was going to say was, in Ghana we don't suffer from this, but a lot of Africa has issues with conflict. Okay, so we're seeing this in Israel and Palestine, where in times of conflict, people tend to flee, and lots of things get destroyed. So that means, you can't continue using the same power sources. It's not the same as if you're living in a nice place that's never had any war or any major conflict for the next 100 years, where not everything's stagnant, but you have stability, shall we say? Yeah, that's probably a better word. And so you first of all, you get the time to develop these new technologies that can provide good alternatives, but you also know that, okay, look, if you build a solar plant, it's not going to get destroyed next. People just have different choices. And I feel like there needs to be more understanding of that.
Yeah. Well, and also, and I'm not gonna, I can understand these people, even if it's like, even though the kind of irritating more part of Extinction Rebellion, I can understand why people get their motivation, but it's like, I wonder if they even stop and think this through. It's like, and also their lives, like, what if they would just stop and think from the moment they get up till they go to bed, what kind of energy sources make their life possible, and which ones are visible to them and which ones are not. Like, how much plastics do they use? What's in their phone? What's in their car? What's in their, all this stuff. Not even to get into the rare earth metal nastiness with the Congo and other places that, what a lovely process that is, to get the things that you need for especially the batteries and to be able to, for the electric cars and other things. But it's just like, and of course I get that, because the people who are in these movements are at the more the medium or the top level. They want this energy. They want the young energy. So they just want to keep them riled up. But it's like, well, they should also, not be, especially not intentionally. But it's like, don't be selling them solutions that won't work. Don't be asking people to divide their time and their money on solutions that won't work. They'll make people some money, and they could be virtue signaling, and there can be fatty and faddish and whatnot. But they stop wasting time on solutions that won't work. even if we yeah, I mean, that's the thing, and I try to use that statistic because I just to try to get people to realize that, even if every single watt of electricity for everybody was from a windmill or solar power, you still have 80% of energy needs that you need to provide. Or who are you going to ask to do without?
Exactly.
Who gets to have this lifestyle that this this kind of 24/7 cheap power lifestyle, and who doesn't? Are you really going to say that we over here spent the last 200 years burning every fossil fuel we could and generating our wealth, but you have to don't even rub those two sticks together because that's releasing carbon into the atmosphere?
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
I'm like, okay.
It's really like a two-tier system, and I think like
are you cooking dinner? Are you cooking dinner, Artless?
No, I'm trying to get my husband to help me make a sangria.
Oh, okay.
And so he's pushing, moving along. We've just swapped places. I moved from the bedroom to the living room, and he's moved to the bedroom.
Yeah, it's okay.
Our studies, we moved, so we're trying to sort out our living space in terms of working from home and stuff. So yeah, I just moved location. Sorry.
That's fine. No, I just thought if you had to if you had to pop off and do something, that was fine.
No. Yeah.
It's like, I'm on a roller coaster. I don't know what's happening in Ghana.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. But it all comes back to, I think, knowing what global trends can be tailored to your own nation, and how that making sure that the things that you do actually benefit your local nation, right? Don't just jump on whatever's trendy. Really think about how it works for your local populace and how they can manage. The whole point is, yes, of course we want people to be elevated enough to have the kind of choices that we have in the West, but it needs to be in ways that works or adapts to their own current lifestyles, and not in ways that just whoever's come up with this bright new idea works perfectly well, where we have so many conveniences and so many alternatives, but translate as well to the world or to the local population who often operate in a different environment. So I think
there's a weird glare on your there's a weird glare on the screen now. It's like you have two little light feet under your chin. There you go. Okay, that's good. It was this weird light effect. There's like these two little light clouds under your chin or something. I'm like, how is she doing that?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, that's good. That's good. This is good. Now, there you go. No, the two light clouds are gone.
The light clouds are coming from this light beam at the top. I don't know. Yeah.
It's all right. No. And I just because no. So so you were saying that one of Ghana's leaders is traveling around doing all these kind of like on the green energy circuit, and you were wondering,
So I just found it like, I mean, I'm a cynic, of course. I'm not her target audience, and I'm watching her do this tour, and it's like, okay, well, I'm sure people are lapping it up. Oh, well, Ghana's really going to become, I don't know, green by, I don't know, 2030 or something. And I mean, we all know that's not going to happen, is it? So it's like,
well, if they change the metric, it could. If they just change what that means, then it. It's like.
To an audience, and I'm sure they're lapping it up like anything. But it's. It's
probably a nice digs, because there's a lot of money in that. So there's a big money in this.
In the West, and then her Instagram is peppered with all these images and wonderful captions that she's probably paid a speechwriter to write, and it's all very Lady Bountiful, and it's like, give us a break. I just find it totally hypocritical and really absurd, because I'm sort of like, The coal pot thing is just a very example of this, where ideally we should get rid of it. Okay, but if that's the case and this person is in government, then your government should be making sure that you providing better electrical alternatives, for example, so that people don't burn this stuff. But you're going on these bloody conferences and telling people we're going to go on these green, and how basically tell me the policy for how you're going to deliver that, rather than going, you know what I mean? I just find that upset.
No, a lot of these things never go anywhere. They never get off paper or photo ops, because when it actually comes to, you know, planning it and administrating it, the people who actually have to do it, I'm sure I feel bad for them, because you know that it's not the top people they're going to get that. It's going to end up on some mid-level person's desk. And they're gonna be like, "What? I'm supposed to try to figure out how to get, you know, the countryside not to use wood for their cooking." You know? And try to sell them on this, you know, like what? It's so I mean, it's a bit of a funny thing, the development work.
We saw this in the UK, where I think for COP26 or whatever, which was held in Scotland, half the leaders who went for this, they flew in via private jet, or Prince Harry and Meghan, for example. You know, it's like, I mean, really. And it's stuff like this that's so frustrating, because the main message, actually, I'm not averse to it. I think of course we all need to think about the environment, and, you know, climate change is definitely real. We're seeing this in, you know, the more extreme weather elements that we keep seeing, both in the West and even in, you know, in the global South. You know, the floodings, the, you know, torrential rains. You know, we're seeing it everywhere. But let's have a very honest conversation about how we get people off this stuff and provide good alternatives. And preaching one thing and then hypocritically flying off on a private jet, and, like, you know. The two does not align.
Yeah. No. Well, and then saying, well, we like, you could, if you do fly, you get the, I don't know how this works with private jets, but, you know, you get the option if you want to, like, pay more to offset your carbon footprint. But that doesn't reduce the amount of carbon that's being put in anyway. Just kind of paying it off. It's like paying off a sin debt or something. It's like, you know. But I like this. Here's a meme I saw. This also back in September, when the climate stuff was kicking off. And this person wrote, "How about you? Things I'm concerned about: totalitarianism, climate change." You can see that totalitarianism covers the whole circle. And I think he was one of these people who was quite critical of some of the measures that were taken during COVID, especially around vaccine mandates and whatnot. And so I wrote, "Isn't climate change a vehicle for totalitarianism these days?" And what I meant is that whenever we're being told something is an emergency, that we have to do X, Y, and Z, there's all, you know, the information's already in, you got to trust the experts and all that. We should always be very critical. So it's like, what are they going to try to push through under the pretext of we have to do this because of climate change, or we have to do this because of global warming? And it's like, well, maybe yes, maybe no. You know, it's like with a lot of the farmers we're seeing starting to organize and push back about them being told different things every 3 years. You know, and it's just like, so it could be for COVID, or it could be for anything that has to do with safety and security. You know, so you know, the terrorist people are out to get you, so we have to have censorship, and we have to be crazy about misinformation, and we have to do all these things because safety. And now it's like, well, we have to do all this stuff. You know, don't have time for deliberation, don't have time for dissensus, don't have time for any of that. No, we know, we just got to go through with it. So it's like, people need to be careful about what else gets, and it's not just, it's only what gets done that's actually about addressing this issue, but what gets thrown in addition, when they're passing these really fantastic things like, we're doing this for you, and, you know, type of thing. I mean, and you look at the Extinction Rebellion, like, we have to get off fossil fuels now. It's like, we have to get off of it now, and nothing's more important, and we have to disrupt everything. And it's like, who do you think would pay the price the most that actually happened? You know, you do not know what kind of a holocaust that would be. if you actually were to flip us, if you could like metaphor, let's say there was some sort of switch that they could flip, and for the next week or so, or 2 weeks, there was nobody could use any fossil fuels, and then check back in 2 weeks later and see how much suffering that has caused. I mean, it's just like we got to get out of the abstract and get down into the particular and think these things through. Easier said than done. I mean, there's billions of us, and we do, what we do in one place doesn't just stay in that one place when it's about the environment. But it's just gotten so totalitarian with some of these some of these activist groups.
There's just, again, it's like there's this whole idea as if to give choice is to label someone evil. Like it's there's no sort of, oh, okay, I'm on this journey and I'm trying to explore this alternative, and I think it would be great if we all did this because these are the dangers and these are the advantages. It's no, if you're in this, you're this evil person who wants to destroy the planet. Or the best part is, if you're not evil and want to destroy the planet, you are completely uninformed and you don't know anything. And it's like, well, maybe I am informed, but maybe I just don't think this works for me or my lifestyle or the that I'm living in. It doesn't make me evil. It doesn't make me I don't know, Andrew Tate's girlfriend. It just like, like just
yeah. I love ExxonMobil.
Yeah.
Don't you dare say anything bad about Shell. No, or British Petroleum. No, but it's also that to and maybe it's also being a bit older, is that when you're dealing with any kind of complex system, and of course the climate is one. And of course, running any kind of society that's more than a couple of people, when you're dealing with energy and waste and water and all kinds of stuff, it's like it's not easy. So there's always going to be upstream and downstream and unintended consequences and all this stuff. So these people have become so fixated on carbon dioxide. It's like carbon dioxide's the devil. We have, like fixated on this number and but for that. And it's like, okay, yeah, carbon dioxide is an issue, but it's also fantastic for plant life, So I mean, and there's also methane, there's all kinds of things. And it's just this like it's been, and this is again how the manufacturing of consent, we've been encouraged to kind of, carbon dioxide's not a person, but to really kind of demonize this particular greenhouse gas. Like there's like all the other stuff is somehow inconsequential. I mean, it's and then I think, well, there's money in that, yeah. And then you can have carbon trading, and you can have carbon offset payments, and you can have this market and that market and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, to make it a very simple story. Okay, carbon's the problem, not our economic systems or our class systems or historical development, geographies and transfers of wealth and capital and all. None of that. No, carbon's the problem. So whatever we can do to reduce that, that's what we should focus on. And I'm being a bit simplistic, but it seems like that's kind of like what we're from the establishment perspective. That's what they want us to buy into,
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just like, let's be a bit wary about that.
Yeah. That's what I mean. We should ask questions, and it should be informed, and we should wonder how these things tailor for other environments. And to ask those questions is not a bad thing. To be wary of what unintended consequences are, or whether they are unintended, the side effects of it, like methane, like the dangerous gases that they produce. Like, do you know what I mean? It should be a full-blooded picture, fully informed choice. So you're aware, of the pluses and minuses of what it takes to switch to these alternatives.
Yeah, and like you said before, what the kind of configuration that works, that makes sense for one area, isn't going to be transferable to every, even within the same state or the same city. Maybe you're going to have to, China, for example, and this is actually a good segue, because one of the things that, of course, the one thing we're supposed to hate even more, I think, than carbon dioxide is nuclear energy. and I can understand, like, with like Chernobyl and that thing that happened with oh crap, in Japan a while back when there's I don't know that, and yeah, and of course I'm very aware that like dealing with the nuclear waste and all that, and it's an issue. However, people tend to think that no progress has been made since Chernobyl. Like there's no, you know, and here's just one example. So because when I mentioned, and all I mentioned was I wasn't even saying anything good or bad about nuclear power. My point was, it's like if you want to reduce fossil fuels significantly, and you don't want to cause a catastrophe for the majority of the world's population, what are you going to substitute it for? Because wind and solar will not work. The only thing we know that could do it is nuclear. Oh, nuclear's bad and this and that. I'm like, well, then what? I mean, I'm saying just like, I'm not saying it's, I'm just saying that, and again, I'm not like, I don't know everything, all the ins and outs of nuclear, the state of the art of nuclear energy, but this is one, this is a map from of China, all the various nuclear power plants that they have, that they're working on, and from being just the beginning phase to being operational. And it's like, because I'd say they have, this guy was being a dick, so I was being a dick back to him. Like, they haven't been greenlit, yeah? So they haven't like decided that, no, they haven't said absolutely no, we can't, that nuclear energy isn't a part of our, what we're looking at. So they've been developing this. And also they've been, of course, we know they've been building lots of dams, and dams, of course, cause a lot of problems. And I think this is funny, just for the audience watching now, or may watch later, that one of the reasons why governments are concerned about Tibet isn't because of the Dalai Lama. It's because of the water sources that start in Tibet.
Right.
The majority of the rivers that for lack of a better word, water a bulk of Asia start in Tibet. So that is why that area is significantly strategically important. Yeah. And so I think that so when the U.S. has an issue with China, or the relationship with China, I think it's quite interesting. Well, of course, the economic part of it, but I think that I've always find it so interesting when people think, and of course, I don't have a problem with people caring about the Dalai Lama and and the Tibetan monks, although I would encourage them to consider the fact that was a feudal society, and that most of the monks came from the upper classes, and that there was peasants, and it was very feudal. And so when the Chinese say they liberated Tibet, in a way they did. They liberated it from this feudal structure. However, I'm not saying that that the way they went about it or continue to go about it has been fantastic or not. It hasn't had its own human rights abuses with the people who didn't want to have that happen. But again, it's just another example about how it's difficult to know what you don't know. And most people, I would say, don't know those two things about Tibet, about the strategic interest of the water, and that it was a feudal society. That the Tibet, before China went in there, they will say the peaceful liberation of the sub-autonomous region of Tibet. That's the official story. And of course, there's people in Tibet who would, I'm sure, characterize that differently. But there are also those who were quite happy with it. So it's a mixed bag. But we're not. Yeah. But nobody really. You don't. And I only know that because I happen to know a couple people who say that, and who are from that region, who really opened my eyes to the broader story. I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. Like, people, it comes to what I've been saying all along about making informed decisions, because so much is unknown to, the casual observer, or who thinks they're just doing good by advocating for XYZ scheme, and not really understanding the part you may be playing in advancing an interest that's not necessarily altruistic.
Yeah. No, you should be very concerned when the most politically and economically powerful actors start saying they're very concerned about women someplace, or a persecuted religious minority someplace. You should be concerned, because it could very well be that, I'm not saying that there aren't things that are going on there, but that's the main reason is so far, I think, has not been the case. So
Yeah.
It's just a bit of a, yeah. And also, I think in terms of fantasies or this kind of narrative about how, okay, climate change is happening, it's real, it's predominantly because of human or our the economic activity, and if we don't do something about it, like, everything's going to go
Two-pot.
sideways. And perhaps and that could very well be the case. But again, being a complex system, and given that we don't know what we don't know, and these things are based on models, which means it's entirely dependent on what kind of information is put into these models to try to speculate. And of course, when people will say that, when you mentioned that the storms are getting worse, there's some people, and I can't remember their name, but they seem to be very skeptical, but they don't seem to, at least as far as I know, they don't have like an economic reason to be skewing the data. And they're like, okay, well, first we have to think about how accurate is our data about storms globally going back. So based on the data we have, we could say that, but we don't have good data going back 20,000 years that covers the globe about hurricanes and typhoons and all this stuff. And so it's just kind of like, it depends. And you could say, when they say the hottest day ever, it's like, well, they don't know that. Based on the data they have, they can say this. And so I think it's this very, they're trying, again, whenever they want to take away your autonomy, your ability to say, hold on a second, let's put on the brakes a bit. It's always a bit to get, it's like, okay, this is, and also you don't want the remedy to be worse than the cure to be worse than the disease, if you can get away with it. But so I used to be totally convinced that, that this is an existential crisis, that that we have to really go all in, or big parts of the earth are going to be uninhabitable in 10 or 20 years. And now I'm not so sure. I'm not saying it's not the case. I'm just saying a bit more skeptical about how confident, the difference between how confident people should be about these projections and how confident they come across. I'm just like, and not that I'm totally for, cleaner energy. I'm, all that stuff. Looking at consumption, getting, I'm all for that. But this idea that if we don't do these drastic things, we're all going to die, I find to be a bit, well, I don't know.
I think we can all do with toning it down a notch, because quite clearly people aren't going to die, don't follow XYZ system of being. Clearly other people are living these lives where they're not following these things because they don't even know these things exist. And they seem to be getting along just fine. It's not great for them, but they're not dead. So the hyperbole is a bit much. It's a bit.
And if Miami goes underwater, whatever, it had a good run. I just hope that people are evacuated before it happens, or they're able to kind of put these things up on stilts or whatever. But just an example, I just want to ask you, I'm not trying to out you or anything, because I also didn't know this until a while back. But what if I asked you, what are the non-man-made causes or non-human causes of climate change? What would you be able to list? So things that can change or have changed the climate that have nothing to do with us humans.
Yeah, us humans. It's something I've really thought about so much, to be honest, and so I'm not confident in really trying. I mean, I feel like I'd be talking outside if I was just.
That's okay. Well, I only know because I did some substitute teaching. I do some substitute teaching every once in a while, and I had to teach this class to some 10th graders a while back, and so I'll just put this up here because this is causes of things that cause climate change. that have nothing to do with humans. So one is this Milankovitch cycle, which is basically the Earth travels around the sun. Its path and its tilt can change slightly, and these changes are called Milankovitch cycles. Must have been the person who calculated this. Affect the amount of sunlight that falls on the Earth, and this can cause temperature of the Earth to change. So basically, the orbit, there could be slight changes in the orbit. So so I guess the width of the oval that we travel around the sun, and also the tilt of the axis changes over time. And so that this is something that can that even though it's slight in measurement, it can have a profound effect on the Earth's climate. But this is something; these cycles aren't happening, every year. This can be like I don't know, maybe anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000 years or whatever it is, because I don't know. I'm not an astrophysicist or a theoretical mathematician, so I don't know how they're able to calculate going backwards in time. How many of these switches have been, and to connect them to pronounced climate shifts on the Earth. This is one thing. But this is large scale. This would be like, maybe you would be able to locate it like if you had like, I don't know, a 500,000 year ice age or something, maybe, or this could, but this is something that this does affect the climate. And then there's the El Nino. And so this is the pattern of changing water temperatures in the Pacific Ocean. In El Nino year, the global temperature warms up, and in a La Nina year, it cools down. But this, and sorry for now, this is whereas the Milankovitch thing is like really large time frames. These are smaller, yeah. So this would explain temperature changes for a year or two, but not like going from global warming to global cooling. That's a different time frame, but it does have an impact. And then there's also solar irradiance, so changing energy from the sun affects the temperature of the Earth in the past. Again, this is the one that they're hard to measure, because if it's a momentary change, there's some flare ups, or there's some whatever. If it's something that really a pronounced shift in the sun, this could change it. And then of course volcanic eruptions, asteroids, this type of thing. Although volcanoes are more associated, like when there's been times in the past, when there's like all kinds of super volcanoes and all kinds of stuff's going on. But this is more has more of a cooling effect, because the aerosol particles that go into the atmosphere have more of a cooling effect than a warming effect. But when this happens, so for example, they think like when the big asteroid hit, they think precipitated the extinction of the dinosaur age. That was such an impact that it also set off a lot of volcanic eruptions, and so that stuff was in the atmosphere for a really long time. And so things cooled off, and lots of plant life and stuff died. But anyway, I think it's interesting because in addition to the interaction between what humans are doing, what different groups of people are doing, and the environment, there's also these even cosmic changes
that are actually disrupting the ecosystem. Yeah. I think it's
and this is like you never hear about this. You never hear about this. I didn't even know about Milankovitch cycles. I mean, I knew about volcanoes and I knew about solar flares. Milankovitch cycles, I had never heard about that until I was substitute teaching just randomly a few months ago. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Look at that. I mean, like, as soon as you said volcanoes, I'm like, yeah, of course that makes sense. Hello. Like, it erupts, and, the fires and the things that they lead to will, of course, affect the climate. And as soon as you said, I was like, oh, why didn't I even think about that? Of course, that's such a normal thing. But yeah, it's insane, because we're made. This is what I mean by this contradiction between being made to feel like you're the worst human on earth for not following the dictates of,
or just having a question, just like, hey,
yeah.
No, it's like, it's like, go ahead, sorry.
Like, what you for doing this will be sitting on a private jet, which probably consumes lots more carbon emissions than what you've done by, I don't know, having burning a log fire on a night out, or not a night out, or
Well,
Like
and
if you look
all those rockets that Elon launches. I mean, and
yeah,
Bezos, or whoever else is, and all those billionaires who want to launch their dicks into space. It's like that also
is a
produces a lot of carbon into
yeah.
the atmosphere, I'd imagine. And a lot of, and I don't know, I'm assuming a lot of the stuff that goes into those rockets is also rare earth metals and has to be mined and all that stuff. So, I mean, I don't know. But again, not that I'm against, space exploration. I would love to live in the Star Trek. I'd love to be on the work on the Starship Enterprise.
No, that's the thing. I don't think anyone is necessarily against the advances that, like, I mean, you don't. It would be a fool who was against alternative forms of exploring how our world powers through to the next century.
Mm-hmm.
But it's this whole idea of it. If you don't go down this path, you are dooming not only yourself but the entire planet, and this is going to be a very heavy moral authority on you. And it's like, guys, come on. Like,
how much,
come on, you can't
how
do
much
it.
have you recycled today, Artless? Huh? Do you recycle?
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're killing the planet.
Yeah. Is that sort of
it goes to the same landfill? It's just like
I just get irritated by it. I'm sort of like, okay, guys, get over this.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I just see. There you are. Okay. Hi. There we go.
Hi. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I just want to see those earrings. No, and I'll just say that I want to plug a book. So this is Bright Green Lies by Derek Jensen, Lear Keith, and Max Wilbert, and they're from Deep Green Resistance. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is a fantastic book. I can't ride with their solutions, but the first 13 chapters, I'm like, rock on, because it's all math and it's all empirics. It's all just facts. It's just, let's look at what's actually going on. And so they talk about the problem and they're saying, okay, you're solving for the wrong variable, which means that they think that basically their argument is that you're trying to solve basically that not only that in the quote unquote West that we're able to maintain our lifestyle, but that we're able to spread that out everywhere, and trying to figure out what can we do to make that happen. And so instead of solving for the wrong variable, and so they go through, so especially chapter 3, so the solar lie part 1, the solar lie part 2, the wind lie, the lie of green energy storage, efficiency, recycling. They have this fantastic thing where they're like, recycling is basically just glorified garbage. Most of it, and a lot of it ends up in the same place, and the process of doing it also produces a lot of stuff that's environmentally bad. So I always think about that when we're being told to recycle and to to have 8 different bins, and I'm like, it's just glorified garbage. We're just kind of like going through this ritual that makes it seem like it's not, just the kind of refuse of our consumptive lifestyle anymore. But anyway, so the recycling myth or lie, the green city lie, the green grid lie, the hydropower lie, other lies, more solutions that won't work. And this is a fantastic book, just because people who disagree with that should go and try to counter their fact-based argument.
Yeah.
But their solution is, they see the solution is industrial civilization. Yeah. So they're saying what we need to do is to get off of this and to realize that industrial civilization is is ecocide, it's bio, all this stuff, that we have a finite planet. We can't keep on doing this industrial thing. We need to go back to some sort of, I don't know what they would call it, like neo-primitivism or something. So basically like, self-sufficiency, local self-sufficiency, having some technology, but having it be very much so. So the solution they propose isn't just going from capitalism to, social market or some sort of socialism, and also a reduced consumption, but looking how we can organize production to meet, the needs of the majority of the population. They're saying, no, we have to, it's industrialization. Industrial civilization is killing us. And until we realize that and plan accordingly, all this stuff isn't going to matter. Now, I can't rock with that, and it could just be that I'm in denial because I like I like the perks of quote unquote industrialized civilization. So it could just be that I'm in denial, but until they get to the real solution, which I think is really debatable, and not just in terms of that it's the only real solution, but how again, like in terms of how would you, because they also talk a lot about overpopulation. I'm always suspicious about that. I'm like, is it overpopulation or is it how we distribute resources and how we manage our resources? Because I think that the Earth can survive. I think that the Earth can probably support around 10 billion people. All right, if we stop putting profit above everything else. But that's another story. But but until that chapter, this book is a banger. I mean, it's just like it's kicking ass and taking names. Which is why it pissed everybody off.
When did it come out?
I think like 2 years ago, maybe. And there was also a movie that came out. A documentary. I can send you the link. I have the book as well. I mean, the book is a banger. And I have to say that, I'm just like, and people like, because you know how I just like, I'm sure I have my favorite things that I'm blind to the problems with. But people on the green energy side, they always have their favorite type of green energy. So it could be, solar, it could be wind, or it could be the electric car, or it could be recycling or the green grid. And so when you puncture a hole in that teddy bear, people lose their minds.
Yes, I do find that people get very militant.
I'm like, I'm sorry, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just saying that the numbers don't add up. And if you think about it for a moment, that these things actually have to be produced and maintained, and what kind of land use that takes and all the other stuff, I would think you would see that the rosy picture is advertising. But people get mad,
Oh, they do. They get very, very, very angry. Puncture a hole in whatever the new cult is, and it's very unhealthy, I'll say. And I'll leave it there. It's just quite unhealthy.
Anyway, before you go, should we totally switch gears and talk about this lovely tweet you responded to on Twitter, or no?
No, I don't mind. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, let me see if I can find it. Okay, so basically, here's the story. Here, what can we say is that based on what I have seen, a vegan diet is, if you're doing a vegan diet because you think it's the most healthy diet, it's not. If you're doing a vegan diet because you think it's going to contribute to saving the planet, that it's also not the case. If you're doing it because you just really don't like, it grosses you out to eat meat products or animal products, or because you are so big on into animal rights, you think that killing animals for food or products is wrong, that's fine. But the other reasons, you might want to think about that. I'd be skeptical. Look into it yourself. Don't take my word for it, because I'm not an expert. But I was convinced by Lear Keith's book, The Vegetarian Myth, and it also has a very big biography, so you can look into her sources and see if you reach different conclusions. And then on the bright green lies, I would say read this book. And see if you can defend your favorite green energy project that you wouldn't only want to have in your town, but you would want to encourage other places in the world that are far less materially developed to forego coal or fossil fuels or dams to go a green route that has all kinds of problems. And so we'll leave it at that. So just be skeptical about good news stories, especially when Goldman Sachs and the White House and the EU and Bill Gates are also very enthusiastic about them. You might want to be a bit skeptical.
And
now we're going to